Commander Vexthor stood before the Galactic Coalition Council, his forearms crossed in a gesture of deep concern. The holographic display behind him showed battle footage that made several council members shift uncomfortably in their seats. On the screen, human soldiers were doing something that most species considered madness. They were charging forward under heavy fire, carrying their wounded, refusing to retreat even when retreat was the logical choice. "This is the third incident this month," Vexthor said, his voice translator rendering his words in perfect coalition standard. "The humans call these soldiers regular forces. They are not elite units. They are not specially selected warriors. These are common military personnel." Council leader Thysa Zera leaned forward from her elevated platform. Her silver skin reflected the light from the holographic display. "Explain what makes them so concerning, Commander. Many species have competent militaries." Vexthor manipulated the controls and the display changed. 3 years ago, humanity joined our coalition. In that time, we have observed their military in 17 separate engagements. They have never lost. More disturbing, they have never retreated, even when facing superior numbers. The footage showed a human patrol vessel engaged with 3 pirate ships. The pirate vessels were larger, better armed, and had numerical superiority. Standard coalition doctrine would call for the smaller ship to withdraw and request support. Instead, the human ship attacked. The council watched as the human vessel took damage that should have crippled it, yet continued fighting. When the pirates tried to board the human ship thinking it was disabled, the humans were waiting for them. "Watch what happens next," Vexthor said quietly. The humans didn't just defend their ship, they counterboarded. Human soldiers in armored suits crossed open space under fire, breached the pirate vessels, and fought hand-to-hand inside enemy ships. The pirates, who had terrorized shipping lanes for years, were captured within an hour. "This is not normal behavior," one council member said. "Their ship was damaged. They should have withdrawn." "That is what we would do," Vexthor agreed. "Humans do not think this way. I have studied their military history extensively. They have a saying, 'The best defense is a good offense.' They believe that attacking is safer than defending." Another council member, a Quilarian named Sornak, spoke up. "But their casualty rates must be enormous. Such aggressive tactics would result in massive losses." "That is what we believed," Vexthor said. "But examine the data." He brought up statistics. In 17 engagements, human forces have suffered an average of 8% casualties. Coalition forces in similar situations average 32%. The humans take fewer losses while achieving better results. The council chamber fell silent as the members absorbed this information. "How?" Thysa Zera asked simply. "Their training," Vexthor explained. "A human regular soldier trains for months before seeing combat. They learn weapons, tactics, hand-to-hand fighting, survival skills, and something they call unit cohesion. But more than training, it is their mindset. Humans have a concept they call acceptable losses. They will take casualties if it means achieving their objective." "That is barbaric," someone said. "Perhaps," Vexthor replied, "but it is also effective. And there is something else. Humans never abandon their wounded. Even in the middle of battle, they will risk death to recover injured soldiers. This should be a weakness, but somehow it makes them stronger. Their soldiers fight harder because they know their comrades will not leave them behind." Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair aboard the Resolute, reviewing patrol reports. His ship was 3 days into a routine border patrol, and so far everything had been quiet. Too quiet, his executive officer had joked. Jake was 32 years old with dark hair starting to show gray at the temples. He had been in the Navy for 12 years, commanding the Resolute for the last 3. By human standards, he was a competent professional officer, nothing special, just good at his job. "Captain," his communications officer called out. "Receiving distress signal from Coalition Station Gamma 9. They're under attack." Jake was on his feet immediately.
"How far?"
20 minutes at maximum burn. Plot a course. All hands to battle stations." Jake pressed the ship-wide intercom. "This is the captain. We have a situation. Coalition station under attack. We're going in hot. Marines prep for possible boarding action." His crew moved with practiced efficiency. The Resolute was a medium-sized patrol vessel, carrying a crew of 90. Not particularly large or powerful, but capable. Jake had trained his people well. When they arrived at the station, they found 4 pirate vessels attacking. The station's shields were failing and evacuation pods were launching into space. 4 ships, his tactical officer reported. Vorgan-class raiders. We're outgunned, Captain. Jake studied the tactical display. Standard procedure would be to call for reinforcements and maintain a defensive position. But the station would be destroyed before help arrived. Those evacuation pods would be easy targets for the pirates. Weapons, Jake said calmly. Target the lead ship. Full spread, torpedoes and railguns. Helm, attack pattern Delta 7. We're going through them. His crew didn't question the order. They had trained for this. The Resolute accelerated toward the pirate formation at full speed. The pirates, surprised by the aggressive approach, scattered. That was their first mistake. In breaking formation, they lost their numerical advantage. The Resolute focused fire on one ship, crippling it quickly. Then Jake did something that made his alien liaison officers stare in disbelief. Marines launch boarding pods. Take that ship, Captain, the alien liaison stammered. That is unnecessary. We have disabled the vessel. We can let them repair their systems and rejoin the fight, Jake interrupted. Or we can take them out of action permanently. Marines are launching in 30 seconds. The boarding pods were small armored craft carrying 10 Marines each. They locked onto the damaged pirate ship and breached the hull. Inside, the human Marines moved through the ship with brutal efficiency. The pirates, expecting a disabled ship to simply surrender, were unprepared for armed soldiers appearing in their corridors. Within 15 minutes, the pirate ship was captured. Jake turned the Resolute toward the next target. The remaining pirate ships, seeing what had happened, tried to flee. Jake pursued. His ship was faster. One by one, they ran down the pirates. By the time coalition reinforcements arrived an hour later, all 4 pirate vessels were captured or destroyed, and the station was secure. The coalition commander who arrived with the reinforcement fleet stared at his tactical display in confusion. Captain Morrison, he transmitted to the Resolute. Please explain your situation report. You engaged 4 enemy vessels with a single ship? Yes, sir, Jake replied. Enemy forces have been neutralized. Station is secure. We have prisoners for interrogation. You should have waited for support. Jake smiled slightly. With respect, sir, there wasn't time. The station would have been destroyed. Later in his report, the coalition commander wrote, Human forces continue to demonstrate aggressive tactics beyond standard protocols. Recommend continued observation. In the council chambers, Ambassador Lisa Chen faced questions about the incident at Station Gamma 9. She was a small woman by human standards, barely 5 feet tall with black hair pulled into a neat bun. She had been Earth's representative to the coalition for 2 years, and she was tired of these meetings. Ambassador, Thesacera said, Captain Morrison's actions were outside standard engagement protocols. He risked his ship and crew against superior numbers. And he won, Lisa replied calmly. The station is intact. Casualties were minimal. The pirates are in custody. That is not the point, another council member said. His tactics were reckless. By your standards, Lisa agreed. By human standards, he did exactly what he was trained to do. He assessed the situation, made a decision, and acted. That's what we expect from our officers. Thesacera studied the human ambassador carefully. Captain Morrison is what you call a regular officer, correct? Not one of your elite personnel? That's correct. Jake Morrison is a good officer, but not particularly remarkable by our standards. There are thousands of captains like him in the fleet. I see. Thesacera paused. Ambassador, we have been reviewing human military structure. Your organization is complex. You have Navy, Marines, Army, Air Force, Coast Guard, and Space Force, multiple branches, each with distinct roles. Yes, Lisa said carefully, sensing where this was going. And within these branches you have different types of units, regular forces, mechanized units, airborne units, and Thesacera consulted her datapad, special forces. The council chamber grew quiet. Every member was watching the human ambassador now. Special forces, Thesacera continued. Elite units, specially selected and trained personnel. If your regular forces are as capable as Captain Morrison's crew, what exactly are your special forces capable of? Lisa Chen took a slow breath. She had known this question would come eventually. The problem was she knew the answer. She had been Army intelligence before joining the diplomatic service. She knew exactly what special forces could do, and she knew the galaxy wasn't ready for that information. Special forces are specialized units trained for specific mission types. Qualzon had been an intelligence analyst for the Nexari Collective for 15 years. He was good at his job, methodical and thorough. When the Coalition contracted his agency to research human military capabilities, he approached it like any other assignment. He expected to spend a few weeks compiling data, write a report, and move on to the next project. That was before he accessed the human data networks. Humans called it the Internet. It was a vast, interconnected system of information available to anyone. Qualzon had never seen anything like it. Most species kept military information classified, hidden behind security protocols. Humans apparently believed in something called transparency and freedom of information. Their military operations, training methods, and organizational structure were publicly available. At first, Qualzon thought it was a deception. No species would openly publish their military secrets. But as he dug deeper, he realized it was real. Humans genuinely shared this information with their own population. He started with basic organizational charts. The human military had 6 main branches, each with specific roles. The numbers were staggering. Earth maintained active military forces of over 2 million personnel, with millions more in reserve. For a single planet, it was an enormous military establishment. Then he found the videos, training footage, recruitment materials, documentary programs, all freely available. He watched human soldiers running for miles carrying heavy equipment. He saw them training in water, in cold environments, in heat and darkness. He watched them practice hand-to-hand combat, weapon drills, tactical exercises. But that was the regular forces. When Qualzon found information about special forces, he stopped eating for 2 days. He couldn't look away from his screen. He learned about Navy SEALs, soldiers who trained in sea, air, and land operations. Their selection course lasted over a year. Most candidates failed. Those who passed were subjected to training that would be illegal under coalition law. They learned to operate in any environment, to survive with minimal equipment, to conduct missions behind enemy lines. He found videos of something called Hell Week. Human candidates were kept awake for 5 days straight, running through freezing water, carrying boats on their heads, performing endless physical exercises. The point wasn't just physical conditioning. It was breaking them down mentally, seeing who would quit and who would keep going. Then there were the Army Rangers, who specialized in airborne operations and direct action. Delta Force, so secretive that even their real name was classified. Marine Raiders, who could fight on land, sea, or air. Air Force Pararescue, who jumped into combat zones to rescue wounded soldiers. Special Forces proper, also called Green Berets, who trained in unconventional warfare. Qualzon made a list, just a simple list of human special operations units. When he was done, he had identified 23 separate special operations units across the 6 military branches. 23. He wrote his report in a daze. His hands shook as he typed. The Coalition thought regular humans were concerning. Regular humans were just the baseline. The special forces were something else entirely. This cannot be accurate, his supervisor said when reading the report. You are saying that humans have soldiers who train for years specifically to operate behind enemy lines, conduct sabotage, and perform assassinations? Yes, Qualzon said quietly. And they volunteer for it. No one forces them. They choose this. His supervisor sent the report to the Coalition Council. Within hours, Qualzon was summoned to brief them personally. Captain Jake Morrison was enjoying 3 days of shore leave when his communicator buzzed. He looked at the message and sighed. Shore leave canceled. Report immediately. 6 hours later, he was back aboard the Resolute, which was being refueled and rearmed at maximum speed. His crew was being recalled from various stations and planets. Something big was happening. Captain, his executive officer said, we're being redeployed to the outer reaches. Coalition transport convoy came under attack by the Vortax swarm. Jake frowned. The Vortax swarm was bad news. They were insectoid creatures that fought in massive numbers, overwhelming their enemies through sheer volume. They had been raiding the outer reaches for decades. Coalition forces usually avoided them when possible. How bad? 12 transport ships carrying civilian evacuees from the Corlin disaster. The Vortax have cut them off from the main shipping lanes. Coalition estimates the transports have maybe 48 hours before they're overrun. What's our response force? 3 Coalition cruisers, 2 frigates, and us, plus... The executive officer checked his orders. plus a special package arriving separately. Jake looked up sharply. Special package? What kind? Doesn't say, sir. Just lists 6 small craft designated as Task Force Talon. Arrival time is 2 hours before we reach the convoy. Jake had heard rumors about special packages. They were human special operations units, but he had never worked with them directly. Regular forces didn't usually interact with special operations unless something bad was happening. This qualified as bad. The Resolute jumped to hyperspace along with the Coalition task force. During the transit, Jake reviewed everything he could find about the Vortac swarm. The intelligence reports were not encouraging. The Vortac fought differently than most species. They didn't care about casualties. They would sacrifice thousands of warriors to achieve an objective. Their ships were fast and numerous, difficult to target effectively, and they didn't take prisoners. Every engagement with the Vortac ended with complete victory or complete defeat. There was no middle ground. When the task force dropped out of hyperspace near the besieged convoy, Jake understood why this mission required special forces. The tactical display showed a nightmare scenario. The 12 transport ships were surrounded by over 50 Vortac attack craft. More were arriving every hour. The transport's shields were failing. They couldn't run, couldn't fight, and couldn't survive much longer. Captain, this is Admiral Kate Sullivan on the command channel. His communicator crackled. All ships maintain position here. Do not engage the Vortac forces. Ma'am, Jake transmitted back. The transports won't last long. We need to... Negative, Morrison. Hold position. Task Force Talon is handling this. Jake looked at his tactical display. Admiral, I don't see Task Force Talon on scanners. You won't, the Admiral replied. Not until they want you to. Jake watched his display, confused. The 6 small craft that made up Task Force Talon should be visible somewhere. They weren't on sensors, weren't on visual, weren't anywhere he could detect. Then one of the Vortac command ships simply exploded. What the hell? His tactical officer exclaimed. Another Vortac ship exploded. Then a third. The Vortac formation began to break apart, confused and disorganized. Ships turned inward, firing at each other. It took Jake a moment to realize they weren't shooting at each other deliberately. They were shooting at something they couldn't see. Task Force Talon had arrived. On the human command frequency, Jake heard a calm voice. Talon 1 to fleet. 6 targets marked for engagement. We're going silent. See you on the other side, then nothing. Just silence on the channel while Vortac ships continued to explode or go dark. The Coalition ships in the task force were transmitting panicked messages to each other, trying to understand what was happening. The Vortac swarm, which had seemed unstoppable minutes ago, was tearing itself apart. 30 minutes after Task Force Talon arrived, the Vortac formation collapsed completely. The surviving enemy ships fled in all directions. The transports were safe. Task Force Talon to fleet, that same calm voice transmitted. Area secure. Transport convoy can proceed. We're detaching to handle the Vortac nest. See you back at base. Jake stared at his display. 6 small ships had broken an entire Vortac formation. He had fought the Vortac before. He knew how difficult they were to kill. What he had just witnessed should have been impossible. Admiral Sullivan, he transmitted, requesting information about Task Force Talon. What exactly did we just witness? There was a long pause before the Admiral responded. That was a SEAL team, Morrison. 6 operators and their support craft. That's what special forces look like in action. Jake sat back in his command chair. 6 people. 6. They had done in 30 minutes what would have taken his entire ship hours to accomplish if it was possible at all. His alien liaison officer was making a gesture of distress. Captain Morrison, that cannot be correct. 6 individuals cannot defeat 50 ships. Apparently they can, Jake said quietly. Later, when the task force returned to base, Jake saw the Special Forces team for the first time. They were loading equipment onto their small craft, preparing for another mission. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Hayes led the team. He was shorter than Jake expected, maybe 5'9", with close-cropped brown hair and calm eyes. He looked tired but alert. The other team members were equally unassuming. Danny was a big man with red hair, handling the heavy equipment. Marcus was lean and moved with precise efficiency. Beth was checking weapon systems, her blonde hair tied back in a ponytail. Alex was smaller than the others, but Jake noticed the rest of the team deferred to Alex's technical expertise. They looked like normal people. A bit more fit than average, perhaps, but not superhuman. Not like warriors who had just destroyed an entire enemy formation. The Vortak nest was located deep in an asteroid field in the outer reaches. Coalition intelligence had mapped its location years ago, but never attempted to destroy it. The Vortak bred quickly and defended their nests with suicidal ferocity. Military analysts estimated it would take a full battle fleet and result in thousands of casualties to eliminate the nest. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Hayes stood in the small briefing room aboard his team's transport, studying holographic displays of the asteroid. His 5 team members sat around the table, alert and focused. Standard nest layout, Ryan said, manipulating the display. Multiple entrances. Honeycomb interior structure, estimated population of 5,000 Vortak warriors. Command chamber is here, deep in the center. That's our primary target. Getting in won't be the problem, Danny said. Getting out will be fun. When is it ever easy? Beth replied. She was checking her translation device, a specialized tool that would let them communicate with any Vortak they encountered. Not that the Vortak were big on conversation, but intelligence gathering was part of the mission. Marcus leaned forward, studying the approaches. Best entry point is the north ventilation shaft. It's too small for Vortak warriors, but we can fit. Puts us about 2 kilometers from the command chamber. 2 kilometers through hostile territory, Alex noted. No backup, no extraction until we complete the mission. Same as always, Ryan said calmly. We go in quiet, stay invisible, complete the objective, and get out. Danny, what's the nest's power situation? They're using a fusion reactor, probably stolen from a coalition mining operation. I can overload it, but we'd need to plant charges on the primary conduits. Give me 10 minutes once we're inside. Ryan nodded. Okay, insertion in 6 hours. Get some rest. This is going to be a long operation. The team dispersed to their quarters. Ryan remained in the briefing room, reviewing the mission parameters one more time. 6 people against 5,000, bad odds by anyone's calculation, but that was the job. He thought about Captain Morrison's expression when watching their previous operation. The regular Navy officer had been amazed by what he saw. Ryan understood. Regular forces trained to fight as units, ships, formations. Special operations trained individuals to be self-sufficient, capable of operating alone or in tiny teams. The difference wasn't just training. It was mindset. Regular forces followed doctrine and procedures. Special operations created new procedures when the situation demanded it. They adapted, improvised, and overcame obstacles through creativity and determination. Ryan checked his equipment one final time and tried to sleep. He had learned long ago to rest whenever possible. Combat was unpredictable, and being well rested could mean the difference between success and failure. 6 hours later, the team approached the asteroid field in their small insertion craft. The vessel was designed for stealth, barely visible on sensors. They navigated through the dense field of rocks carefully, avoiding Vortak patrol routes. Approaching entry point, their pilot transmitted. Drop off in 2 minutes. The team suited up in their combat gear. Unlike the bulky armor that regular forces used, special operations gear was lighter and more flexible. It provided less protection but allowed for greater mobility. The trade-off was intentional. Special operations relied on not being hit rather than surviving hits. They inserted through the ventilation shaft exactly as planned. The narrow tunnel was dark and cramped, barely wide enough for a human. The Vortak, being larger, couldn't use these passages. It made the shaft a perfect infiltration route. Ryan led the way, moving slowly and carefully. Behind him, the team followed in single file. They were using passive night vision, no active sensors that might alert the Vortak to their presence. Communication was through hand signals and brief whispered words. The shaft opened into a larger chamber. Ryan paused at the entrance, scanning for threats. The chamber was empty, but he could hear movement in the distance. The Vortak were nearby. They moved through the nest like ghosts. When Vortak patrols approached, the team simply faded into shadows, becoming invisible. The Vortak sensors were designed to detect ships and large groups, not individual humans moving with extreme stealth. It took 3 hours to reach the command chamber area. Along the way, Danny placed small charges on key structural points and power conduits, not enough to destroy the nest immediately, but enough to cause chaos when detonated. The command chamber was a large cavern at the nest's center, Vortac commanders, larger and more intelligent than regular warriors, were coordinating operations on holographic displays. Ryan counted 7 commanders and perhaps 30 warrior guards. "Beth," Ryan whispered, "I need to know what they're planning. Can you tap their communications?" Beth moved to a terminal on the chamber's edge, connecting her device. Her fingers flew across the interface, translating Vortac code into something readable. After a moment, she nodded. "They're planning another raid," she whispered back. 3 colony worlds in the next sector. Civilian targets. Timeline is 10 days. Ryan's expression hardened. "Not happening." "Danny, charges ready?" "Ready on your signal." Marcus, Alex covering positions. "Beth, finish that download and fall back. We're going loud in 30 seconds. The team moved into position. Ryan counted down silently. At 0, Danny triggered the charges placed throughout the nest. The explosions were carefully calculated. Not large enough to destroy the nest entirely, but devastating to its infrastructure. Power failed throughout the facility. Ventilation stopped. Emergency lighting flickered on. In the confusion, Ryan's team struck. They moved through the command chamber with brutal efficiency. The Vortac commanders barely had time to react before they were neutralized. The warrior guards, disoriented by the sudden darkness and explosions, couldn't organize an effective defense. The entire engagement lasted 90 seconds. When it was over, the command chamber was secure, and the team was already moving to their extraction point. "All stations, this is Talon 1. Ryan transmitted on the team frequency. "Primary objective complete. Extraction in 10 minutes. Be ready." They ran through the darkened nest, pursued by confused and angry Vortac warriors. But the damage to the nest's infrastructure had created chaos. Warriors couldn't coordinate, couldn't track the human team effectively. By the time the Vortac organized a response, the Special Forces team was already exiting through their insertion point. Their extraction craft picked them up exactly on schedule. As they accelerated away from the asteroid, Danny triggered the final set of charges. The nest fusion reactor overloaded and the entire asteroid cracked apart in a brilliant explosion. "Talon 1 to Fleet Command," Ryan reported calmly. "Mission successful. Vortac nest destroyed. Returning to base." On the Coalition command ship, Admiral Kate Sullivan allowed herself a small smile. 6 people had just accomplished what would have required a fleet. She knew the Council would be briefed on the operation. They needed to understand what Special Forces truly meant. The debrief took place in a secure facility. Council members attended via holographic link, watching as Ryan's team explained the operation step by step. "You infiltrated a nest containing 5,000 enemy combatants," Vexthor said slowly. "6 of you." "Yes, sir," Ryan replied, "though we avoided most of them. Direct engagement is rarely the goal. We neutralized the command structure and destroyed critical infrastructure. The nest couldn't function after that." "How did you avoid detection?" "Training, sir. We spent years learning stealth techniques, studying enemy sensor systems, practicing movement in hostile territory. We train until these skills become instinct." And the combat in the command chamber. 90 seconds of action preceded by 3 hours of careful positioning. We knew where every target was before we engaged. When we moved, it was decisive and overwhelming. Thysizera spoke up. "Commander Hayes, help us understand something. You and your team voluntarily chose this career path. You trained for years, undertake missions with extreme risk, and operate with minimal support. Why?" Ryan was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. "Ma'am, someone has to do these missions. Regular forces are excellent at their jobs, but there are some situations that require different approaches. Smaller teams, specialized skills, unconventional tactics. We trained to be that option, but you could be regular forces. Have normal military careers with less risk. With respect, ma'am, risk is relative. Regular forces face risks too. They just face them differently. We've trained to the point where high-risk operations are manageable. It's not bravery or recklessness. It's competence developed through extensive preparation." Qualzon, who had been observing silently, asked a question. "Commander, I researched your selection process. Thousands apply to become SEALs. Only a small percentage complete training. What separates those who succeed from those who fail?" "Not quitting," Ryan said simply. "The training is designed to be nearly impossible. We're pushed beyond normal human limits physically and mentally. Some people have physical limitations that prevent them from completing training, but most who fail quit mentally before their bodies give out. The ones who succeed are the ones who refuse to quit no matter how much it hurts." That sounds like torture, someone said. It's not pleasant, Ryan admitted, but it's necessary. Combat is chaos. Things go wrong. People get hurt. Equipment fails. When everything... Ambassador Lisa Chen stood before the full Coalition Council in a secured chamber. This time, there were no holographic links, no remote attendees. Every council member was present in person. The security level was unprecedented. What was about to be discussed could not risk being intercepted or leaked. Lisa had spent the last 3 days preparing for this briefing. Earth Command had finally authorized full disclosure of special operations capabilities. The Council had demanded it, and continued refusal would have damaged Earth's standing in the Coalition. So now she would tell them everything. Before I begin, Lisa said, I need to provide context about human military culture. This is not an excuse or justification. It is simply information necessary to understand what I'm about to share. The Council members waited silently. Humans have been fighting wars for our entire recorded history. It is not something we are proud of, but it is our reality. Over thousands of years, we have developed extensive knowledge about warfare, tactics, and military organization. Special Operations Forces are the result of this accumulated knowledge. She brought up a holographic display showing Earth's history. Modern special operations began roughly 300 years ago. Small units conducting missions behind enemy lines, sabotage, reconnaissance. Over time, these units became more sophisticated, more specialized. Each major conflict taught us new lessons, developed new techniques. Ambassador, Zara said, we understand that humanity has military experience. What we need to know is the current state of your Special Operations Forces. Lisa nodded. I will be direct. Earth currently maintains approximately 70,000 special operations personnel across all military branches. These individuals are divided into multiple units, each with specific mission profiles. She began displaying information about each unit: Navy SEALs for maritime operations, Army Rangers for airborne assaults and direct action, Delta Force for counterterrorism and precision strikes, Marine Raiders for expeditionary operations, Air Force Pararescue for combat search and rescue, Special Forces for unconventional warfare. These are just the primary units, Lisa continued. There are numerous support elements, specialized teams, and classified units I cannot discuss even in this briefing. Cannot or will not? Someone asked. Cannot. I do not have clearance for information about certain units. Their existence is known, but their capabilities and operations remain classified above my security level. That statement caused murmurs throughout the chamber. Humans had military units so secret that their own ambassador didn't know about them. Lisa pressed on. Let me explain the selection process. Each special operations unit has different requirements, but they all share common elements. Candidates must first serve in regular military forces. They must demonstrate exceptional physical fitness, mental resilience, and leadership potential. Only then can they apply for special operations training. She displayed statistics. For Navy SEALs, approximately 1,000 candidates begin training each year. Fewer than 100 complete it. The attrition rate exceeds 90%. For other units, the rates are similar. Special Operations selects only the most capable individuals. What happens during this training? Fexthor asked. That is where things become difficult to explain, Lisa admitted. The training would violate coalition laws regarding humane treatment. But I must stress, every candidate volunteers. No one is forced into special operations training. She brought up video footage of SEAL training. The council members watched in silence as human candidates were subjected to physical and mental stress that seemed impossible to endure. Running for miles carrying heavy loads, swimming in freezing water, operating without sleep for days. All while instructors constantly challenged them, pushed them, tried to make them quit. This is Hell Week, Lisa explained. 5.5 days of continuous training with maximum 4 hours of sleep total. Candidates are pushed to their absolute limits. The purpose is not physical conditioning. It is teaching them that they can endure far more than they think possible. This is barbaric, a council member said. By your standards, yes, Lisa agreed. By human standards, it is necessary. Special operations personnel will face situations where failure means death for themselves and others. They need to know they will not break under pressure. The training builds that confidence. She showed more footage. Diving operations in dark, cold water, parachute training from extreme altitudes, close quarters combat drills, survival training in hostile environments. After basic qualification, the training continues, Lisa said. language skills, cultural awareness, advanced weapons, tactical driving, technical surveillance, demolitions, emergency medicine. The list goes on. A special operations soldier trains for years before their first operational deployment. And this is for all 70,000 personnel? Thysera asked. Correct. Every special operations soldier undergoes extensive training. But there are different levels. Some units require additional qualification. Delta Force, for example, recruits from individuals who are already special operations qualified. They take the best and train them further. The council absorbed this information. Qualzon spoke up. Ambassador, I researched something called SEER training. Can you explain this? Lisa's expression became grim. Survival, evasion, resistance, and escape. It is training designed to prepare soldiers for capture by enemy forces. Students are taught survival techniques, how to evade pursuit, and how to resist interrogation if captured. Resist interrogation? Someone asked. Yes. The training includes simulated captivity where students experience psychological and physical stress designed to mimic enemy interrogation methods. It is extremely unpleasant, but personnel who might operate behind enemy lines need to understand what they might face. The council chamber was completely silent now. The implications were clear. Humans trained their soldiers to resist torture. They prepared for worst-case scenarios in ways the coalition had never considered. Let me address the obvious question, Lisa said. Why do we do this? Why train soldiers so intensively, push them so hard, prepare them for such terrible possibilities? She met Thysera's gaze directly. Because when we send people into danger, we owe them the best possible preparation. Special operations missions are high risk by nature. The training is difficult because the missions are difficult. We would rather have soldiers quit during training than fail during actual operations where failure costs lives. How often are these forces deployed? Vexthor asked. Constantly. Special operations units are always deployed somewhere. Training missions, advisory roles, direct action operations, they are our most utilized military asset because they can operate with minimal footprint and maximum effectiveness. Lisa brought up operational statistics. In the last year alone, Special Operations Forces have conducted over 4,000 missions across Coalition space and beyond. Most were training exercises or advisory missions, but several hundred were direct action operations. 4,000 missions, Thysera repeated. And we knew about how many? Perhaps a dozen. The rest were either classified or considered routine enough not to warrant reporting. The council members exchanged looks. 70,000 special operations soldiers conducting thousands of missions annually, and the coalition had been completely unaware. There is one more thing you should understand, Lisa said. Special operations forces are not separate from regular forces. They work together. Special operations conduct missions that enable regular forces to operate. Regular forces provide support and follow-through for special operations. It is an integrated system. She showed a tactical diagram. When you see human military forces deploy, you are seeing the visible portion. Regular forces, ships, conventional units. But special operations are often already there, preparing the battlefield, gathering intelligence, conducting preliminary operations. They are the invisible hand that makes everything else possible. Vexithor stood and approached the display. Show me a typical operation. How do regular forces and special operations work together? Lisa brought up a hypothetical scenario. Let's say we need to secure a hostile station. Regular forces would approach openly, demonstrating military presence. Meanwhile, special operations would infiltrate the station covertly, disable defenses, gather intelligence about enemy positions. When regular forces arrive, the enemy is already compromised. The operation succeeds with minimal casualties. And if regular forces were not available, special operations can conduct the entire mission alone if necessary. It takes longer and involves more risk, but they are trained to operate independently. A new council member recently appointed asked a naive question. Ambassador, why not just make all your forces special operations? If they are so much more capable, why maintain regular forces at all? Cost and specialization, Lisa replied. Training a special operations soldier takes years and enormous resources. They are specialists, excellent at specific mission types but not designed for conventional warfare. Regular forces are versatile and can be trained more quickly. We need both. Special operations for precision work, regular forces for large-scale operations. And the psychological toll? The council member pressed. This training, these missions. How do your people handle it? The Kreth Empire had existed for 800 years. They were a proud warrior species, strong and disciplined. Their military had conquered dozens of systems, and they had fought the coalition to a standstill multiple times. They respected strength and despised weakness. When their intelligence services analyzed humanity, they saw a species that avoided conflict when possible. Humans preferred diplomacy, negotiation, peaceful solutions. The Kreth interpreted this as weakness. Humans, they concluded, would back down if pressured sufficiently. The attack on the human colony of New Boston was designed to prove this theory. A quick strike, minimal casualties, but enough to send a message. The Kreth expected humans to negotiate, perhaps surrender the colony to avoid further conflict. They were catastrophically wrong. Within 12 hours of the attack, human Special Operations Forces struck 17 targets simultaneously across Kreth space. The Kreth military, still celebrating their successful raid, suddenly found themselves under attack from an enemy they had never seen coming. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Hayes led SEAL Team 7 toward a Kreth naval facility on the ocean world of Kreth Prime. The facility manufactured torpedoes and provided maintenance for the Kreth submarine fleet. It was located 500 meters underwater, protected by multiple defensive systems and considered impregnable. The SEALs thought otherwise. Approaching target, Ryan said quietly through his team's communication system. Thermal scans show the facility is operating at normal capacity. They don't know we're here. His team swam through the dark water using specialized equipment that made them nearly invisible to sensors. They had inserted from a submarine stationed 200 kilometers away, swimming for hours to reach the target. Each team member carried enough equipment to sustain them for the mission, plus the weapons and explosives needed to destroy the facility. Danny, you seeing those defensive emplacements? Ryan asked. Yeah, automated turrets, pressure sensors, the usual. Give me 5 minutes. Danny moved ahead, placing small charges on key systems. The explosions would be tiny, barely noticeable, but they would disable the defensive network completely. It was precision work that required years of training and steady nerves. When the defenses went dark, the team moved in. They breached the facility through a maintenance access, entering the interior without triggering alarms. Inside, Kreth technicians were working on torpedo assemblies, completely unaware that enemy soldiers were now inside their secure facility. The SEALs moved through the facility methodically. They placed charges on structural supports, power systems, and manufacturing equipment. They downloaded data from computer systems. They identified key personnel for intelligence purposes. All of this happened in complete silence, with the Kreth personnel working nearby never suspecting anything was wrong. Charges set, Beth reported. Estimate complete destruction on detonation. Copy team exfiltrate. We've got 10 minutes to clear the kill zone. They exited the way they came, swimming back into open water. Behind them, the facility continued operating normally. The charges wouldn't detonate until the team was safely away. When the explosions came, they were devastating. The facility collapsed on itself, its structure compromised beyond repair. Secondary explosions from stored munitions made the destruction complete. Kreth Prime's primary naval manufacturing facility was gone, and that was just one target. On the surface of Kreth homeworld, Army Rangers were conducting a different type of operation. Major Scott Williams led his company in an airborne assault on a military command center located in the capital city. This was not a covert operation. This was a demonstration of capability. 30 seconds to drop, the pilot announced. Scott checked his equipment one final time. Behind him, 200 Rangers were doing the same. They would be jumping from high altitude, using precision guidance to land directly on the command center. It was bold, aggressive, and exactly the kind of operation that would shock the Kreth military. Green light. Go, go, go! The Rangers dropped into the night sky. They fell through darkness, their stealth equipment making them invisible to Kreth sensors. Only at the last moment did they deploy parachutes, landing on the command center's roof with practiced precision. The Kreth guards never had a chance. The Rangers moved with overwhelming speed, breaching the building and securing it floor by floor. Within 20 minutes, they controlled the entire facility. Within an hour, they had extracted every piece of intelligence the command center contained. Command, this is Ranger Actual, Scott transmitted. Target secured. 0 friendly casualties. Requesting extraction. The operation was flawless. The Kreth leadership watching from other locations understood immediately that their capital was not safe. If humans could strike their command center this easily, nowhere was secure. In space above another Kreth world, Delta Force operatives were conducting an even more sensitive operation. Captain Laura Mitchell and her team had infiltrated a prisoner facility where the Kreth held political dissidents and captured Coalition Personnel Delta Force specialized in hostage rescue and counterterrorism. This mission was exactly what they trained for. Laura's team had inserted onto the planet 3 days earlier, observing the prison, learning guard schedules, identifying weaknesses. Now they were inside the facility, moving through corridors with weapons ready. Unlike the other operations happening simultaneously, this one required keeping prisoners safe while neutralizing guards. It was delicate work. Cell block secured, one team member reported. 32 coalition personnel identified. Kreth political prisoners in the next section, another added. Looks like about 50. Laura made a quick decision. We take them all. Coalition personnel first, then the Kreth prisoners. They're all coming out with us. The team worked efficiently, releasing prisoners and providing them with basic equipment. The freed captives followed instructions without question, too shocked to do anything else. Outside, Kreth guards were responding, but Delta Force had planned for this. They held key choke points controlling the facility's layout. Transport inbound, Laura's communications specialist reported. 2 minutes. The team moved the prisoners to an open area on the prison's roof. When the transport ships arrived, they loaded everyone aboard quickly. The entire rescue took less than 15 minutes from breach to extraction. As they lifted off, Laura looked down at the prison. The Kreth would find their facility breached, their prisoners gone, and no clear understanding of how it happened. That uncertainty would spread throughout their security apparatus. Marine raiders, meanwhile, were establishing beachheads on 3 different Kreth-occupied worlds. These operations were larger, involving multiple companies working together. The raiders specialized in expeditionary warfare, securing territory that regular forces could then occupy. Colonel Nathan Price commanded the operation on Kreth 7, an industrial world the Kreth had conquered 2 years earlier. His orders were straightforward: secure a landing zone large enough for regular forces to deploy, disable local defenses, and prepare for main force arrival. First wave is on the ground, his operations officer reported. Resistance is minimal. Kreth forces are confused. Nathan nodded. That was intentional. The raids were coordinated to happen simultaneously across multiple systems. Kreth military was responding to attacks in dozens of locations at once. They couldn't concentrate forces anywhere because threats were everywhere. Push the perimeter out. I want 3 kilometers in all directions secured by dawn. The raiders moved with practiced efficiency. They had trained for this kind of operation countless times. Working in small units, they cleared buildings, secured roads, and established defensive positions. Behind them, engineers were already setting up landing facilities for the main force. By morning, the beachhead was secure. When regular human forces arrived, they would have a prepared position to land at, allowing them to deploy rapidly. The Kreth garrison on Kreth 7, which had been a significant threat, was now isolated and neutralized. All of these operations happened within 72 hours. The Kreth Empire, which had existed for centuries and considered itself a military power, found itself under attack from an enemy they couldn't predict or counter. Human special operations forces struck like ghosts, appearing where they shouldn't be able to reach, accomplishing objectives that should have been impossible. In the Kreth Imperial Palace, the Military Command Council met in emergency session. Reports flooded in from across their territory. Facilities destroyed, command centers breached, prisoners rescued, entire defensive networks compromised. How are they doing this? The Supreme Commander demanded. Our intelligence said humans avoided conflict. They prefer negotiation. Our intelligence was wrong, his chief analyst replied. These are not regular forces. These are human special operations units. They operate on a completely different level. How many of them are there? Unknown. But they appear to be hitting us everywhere at once. The Supreme Commander looked at the tactical displays showing damage across the Empire. In 3 days, humans had struck more targets than the Coalition had hit in 3 years of conflict. Can we stop them? No, sir. We don't know where they'll strike next. Our defenses are designed for conventional warfare. These human units ignore conventional approaches entirely.